This is Wandering Universe. Today, I'll be exploring an ancient ruin that bears its own geometric signature. Stunning, impressive, and attractive, you simply can't ignore these long, lean, elegant ladies as you walk past them. Splendid in its architecture, silhouetted from the sunlight. Built by master builders whose skill and talent in the art of stone masonry goes beyond impeccable. So, let's go exploring. Hello everyone, welcome back to Wandering Universe. I have been away for a while. I've had family and personal issues to attend to, and I've also been made redundant in my place of employment. I had to negotiate a better payout. They were going to give me less, but I had to negotiate hard to actually get more, and finally that matter has so it's been resolved. Because of that, it's given me time and the freedom to actually concentrate more on exploring ancient ruins on this planet. If you've been wondering all this time what I've been up to, I've actually been working on a video plus dealing with those matters at hand. Enough of me, let's have a look at this planet. We're not going to Africa, but we are going to be exploring somewhere in Africa. So come on in, let's go exploring, let's go right in, let's have a look. We're going to a place called Ethiopia. What's in Ethiopia? Well, there's something in the northern region of the continent that shares an ancient ruin that's nearby another ancient ruin in Sudan and in Egypt. Somehow these ruins have something in common, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to take you right in. We're going to the northern region of Ethiopia. We're going to this area called Axum. Axum can be spelled A-X-I-U-M or A-X-I-A-M or A-K-S-A-U-M, however way you like to see it. We're going to go right in to Axum today, and I'm going to show you a comparison between an old settlement they've unearthed to the township of Axum today. How kingdoms used to be ruled, the size of the Axum settlement, and how we rule a particular area that is larger than what it was thousands of years ago. Okay, we're going to go right in. This is called the Obelisks of Axium. They're not just in this area right here, they also stretch out to this area here. As you can see from the shadow of the sun, these are the remaining obelisks that are still standing today. There are about 1, 2, 3 fallen. Archaeologists theorize earthquakes. I'm not sure about that one. I'll go in a little bit closer. We're going to look at the granddaddy of them all, which is this obelisk. And the base still remains. It's there. Hasn't moved, hasn't cracked, hasn't been destroyed. The base is still there, firmly wedged into the foundation, and there'd be several feet of bedrock beneath this base. What caused it to topple over? We don't know. But as I said earlier, archaeologists assume it was earthquakes. This is not the only one. There are several others that have toppled over right here, as you can see. These are mostly blanks. This one may have motifs etched alongside of it. This one is very interesting. This is a very large concrete slab. There's a lot of rubble surrounding it. Possibly they were in works of building another settlement or another obelisk or something else other than that. So this granite slab would have been another obelisk they were going to build, but smaller in stature compared to the large one, as you can see here. Now, up here, just not far off, there are several more obelisks. This one's fallen over, as you can see here. The base is still wedged into the ground. There's several more that have also fallen over. This one's still standing. These have fallen over, as you can see here. They look like toothpicks. From this satellite image, they look like toothpicks. But actually, when you're down there and you're up close, they're actually humongous. And there's more obelisks right here. I think that's still standing. That may be still standing. And these would have been toppled over. Now, a lot of them were considered blanks and not in use, other for possibly another purpose way back before King time. And some of them do have not cuneiform writing, but some sort of geometric type of language written alongside those columns. Not too far from the obelisks is this settlement right here. As I said earlier, if you compare that size settlement compared to today's modern settlement, the size is tiny compared to the population surrounding the obelisks right here. And that's mainly due to economic changes, not just the environment, but monetary system changes, rise and fall of empires. What's interesting is that there are more settlements surrounding it. Only 10% of the site has been uncovered. There is another tomb not far, less than a kilometre, about 1.8 kilometres away. There is another tomb right here. I'll just take you in. There's another tomb they've just unearthed. They believe this is the tomb of King Caleb. I'm not sure if that's true. They have not found any human remains to prove that it was King Caleb that was buried there. The quarry site, they believe, is in this region here. So if you have a look, it's pretty high up. This is quite a mountainous terrain, quite a hike to trek up there. If you have a look where the obelisks are and where the quarry site is, that they managed to haul and drag using elephants all the way down from the mountain to this very site. Archaeologists today have no clue for the true purpose of its construction. So there you have it. And now, for your own viewing pleasure, we are going to explore the obelisks of Axum. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Africa, a great continent of timeless history, complete with panoramic landscapes primed since the dawn of the primate. A landscape of sparse beauty filled with wildlife in an evergreen sanctuary brimming with majestic waterfalls, giant lakes, and rivers that flowed along endless pathways. The Ice Age gave birth to a new fertile estate, tempting every mammal to graze and pasture wherever their senses took them. The tranquil lush green pastures complementing a vast vegetation sprouted an abundance of edible foods for every animal to forage. Africa was the continent of a self-sustaining habitat that brought pleasure, ease, and peace for those who wandered the plains at their own risk. Life was good. Whilst wild beasts roamed the terrain and hunter-gatherers wandered the lands, its Garden of Eden was coming to an unexpected end. For the next few thousand years, the lands experienced a never-ending drought, the rains stopped coming, and the animals, including the Homo sapien, went in search for higher fertile grounds. As the inlands of the continent experienced the Big Dry, the coastal edges became the last resort of habitation. A new dawn arose and life was never the same. Those who survived the harshest seasonal change remained adamant, adapting to a new environment. However, not all of Africa became a barren wasteland. One fortunate area remained relatively green, with trees that blanketed the rocky mountain terrain in the northeastern region. This place is called Ethiopia. Nestled within the mountain ranges are these ancient abandoned ruins. The Obelisks of Axium are located in a town of the Tigray region near the base of the Adwa Mountains. These vintage obelisks are honoured in our modern history books for its structural integrity. Whilst the Neolithic and Paleolithic settlements during the 7th to 4th century BC made little use of these relics, other for curious admiration. As time passed, a new empire gave rise to a proud king, Ezana, who exalted his title in the 4th century BC. Although he held his crown quite long and strong, his empire came to misfortune and an abrupt end. Shortly thereafter, the area was sadly left to rot in the dust of time. The word Axum is a derivation of the word Axum, from Aksumite, the kingdom of Aksumia. The obelisks look like giant matchsticks or humongous toothpicks in the sunlight. They fancy themselves as the silent watchers of time, observing many sieges, invasions, economic conquests, and downfalls of many empires. They even witness countless foreign relations, such as Rome, China, and Persia, congratulating themselves with a pat on the back for trying. Whilst these silent ladies saw a glint of gold that tantalized every human prehistoric goal to be top dog of the universe, for 800 years Axum once served as an administration hub for foreign trade and diplomatic relations that put them on the ancient road map. To find out more, let's travel back in time, exploring the days of the Aksumite lives.
Though the distance is very close, which may be about 50 kilometers northeast of Axum, there was the Yeha civilization. The writing was started there. Construction of palaces was started at Yeha. Temples or religious centers were started at Yeha. Small-scale industry was started at Yeha. This clearly shows that Yeha was a small urbanized urban center. Therefore, after the decline, probably after the decline of Yeha, it seems that Axum had taken place to succeed Yeha.
By around the 400s BC, we see a distinct culture which is very much an Ethiopian culture. From that, we start seeing city-states develop. The city-states of Yeha, Adwa, Shire, what we now refer to these as modern cities, and Aksum begin to vie for power and control over the trade routes.
Aksumites were very aggressive, I can say, in their expansion. They were expansionists. And they were able to leave us different inscriptions, unlike that of Yeha, which was totally dependent on one language, that is Sabian. The Aksumites added local language, Ge'ez, which later on developed and was used as a church language. And another one, the Greek language, because Greek at that time was, I can say, language of commerce.
The Aksumite Empire dominated the trade route of the Red Sea They even minted their own currency to facilitate trade.
They had highly refined coins with the bustos of the emperors, legends written under them. That was the skill of the Aksumite smiths.
The silver coinage most likely was used internally for trade. Why? Simply because we see a lot more gez in the inscriptions of the coins. We find a lot more of the coinage here itself, and it seems to have been an easier way to trade internally using those two other metals than gold. Gold, again, I mean, when you're dealing with an elite people, you're not really trading at the minuscule level of a couple of coins.
In Axum, the Aksumites were producing precious trading items like gold, ivory, hides of wild animals, including slaves. Therefore, this made it very important for the Egyptians and others. So it is because of this that it developed very well. What they imported was linen clothes for the upper class, cotton clothes for the lower class. Sometimes even golden plates were imported to the Horn of to Ethiopia.
We find, for instance, imported pottery. So to bring pottery from somewhere as far away as North Africa, for instance, or as far away as Persia, or even Central Asia, indicates that there was not only a taste for very exotic and luxurious items, but also an ability to pay for them.
It's also assumed that the Aksumites were trading with China, because there are evidences for this one. As far as the trade with the Middle East is concerned, Ethiopian coins were found there, India, Saudi Arabia, and in the Mediterranean world. That is clear indication that the currency that the Aksumites produced was used outside of Ethiopia.
Have you noticed how botched our human history truly is? It isn't that clear-cut, is it? As you all know, empires, since the dawn of farming, have come and gone at a blink of an eye. It seems they don't like to hang around that much. Usually the ones who benefit from the Game of Thrones were the ultra-wealthy, taking their gold hoard to farm a new empire elsewhere, whilst the rest of the unfortunate were dealt with the final blow. An economic mayhem. But, of course, the wealthy had one disadvantage. They couldn't take with them the long, lean stone ladies as their show of glory, could they? A variety number of obelisks come in all sorts of shapes, sizes and design, mostly dotted across the landscape in their allocated posts. Some are lean and slender, unintimidated of their nakedness. These obelisks were possibly blanks. Others are small in stature, complete with either a trapezoid or rounded apex, whilst others remain as a discontinued line. None of these ad hoc obelisks show engraved motifs along their hard bodies. Standing side by side, separated by several metres, are the three remaining obelisks partnering a colossal presence. They are the high towers of modern skyscrapers. Their splendid architecture is not shy of its eloquence. Their heights vary in weight, with their slim bodies covered in decorated symbols. Number 1 obelisk stands at 21 metres tall. Number 2 obelisk, called the Stele of Ezana, stands at 24 metres tall, weighing at 160 tonnes. And the granddaddy of them all, the fallen obelisk, once stood at 34 metres tall and weighing 500 tonnes. All are made from granite. Most archaeologists could not configure the exact type of stone used to produce them. However, a recent study suggests they're made from grey granite sourced from Egypt near Aswan. Depending on the light of day, a rainbow of hues saturates the stone band of colour, from grey overtones with a speck of blue ranging from bright sandy yellow to a light grey hue. Every one of them were transported down from Egypt in one solid single block. The symbolical writing speaks a language of an unknown origin. Many academics have difficulty deciphering its allegoric calligraphy. It displays a geometry anchor chart of circled dots, right-angled squares, and indented horizontal lines etched along a ruled line. Each of these shapes were carefully embossed from a patient hand. Number 1 obelisk reveals a naked back, enhancing the geometric decor on the remaining 3 sides, whilst number 2 and 3 obelisks have a geometric pattern contoured along the columns. All 3 monoliths writing begin from the base, extending all the way up towards the apex. The apex seated on top of the 3 grand obelisks shows smooth rounded peaks, cut and chiselled with precision. In the centre, there is a large hollowed notch caved into the stone, perfectly symmetrical to fit an object into a suction cup-like groove. At the base, there are false doors sculptured into the column, giving the illusion of one. Could it be they acted as a portal to another time dimension? The inscriptions show the hallmark of their ancient technology. On all 3 obelisks, most of the characters are consistent and uniform, whereas the fallen one shows a slightly different variation. These writings have not yet fully conveyed or properly interpreted. One might suggest it be an instruction manual with detailed information on how to operate this device. It is unknown how the fallen obelisk met its fate, either through a natural disaster or a deliberate act of war in the form of a projectile. Several metres away from the main centre is a 100 square metre granite slab. It weighs at 300 tonnes. Attention to detail is seen along the edges, left unfinished and as if it were in preparation for another obelisk installation. Around the sides, countless small stone blocks were discarded and damaged. This lone granite slab share a similar coincidence played out in Aswan, Egypt. There is speculation these obelisks were likely constructed and installed on site around the 4th century AD. One theory claims these obelisks were the borrowed concept from Meroe in Sudan. There is insufficient evidence to support this hypothesis. It is not clear whether each of them were erected later or earlier. A further away is a supposed royal tomb. There is a false door just above the main entrance. A stairway descends into the underground tunnel. Above ground, large paved granite flooring envelopes the open passage. The perfect aligned stone steps descend into the polygonal stone wall passage. These passage walls were an ancient technology that was their trademark, a signature design that was ahead of its time. An open tunnel leads into a long stone passageway encased with surrounding rock. One of the tunnels leads into the supposed royal burial chamber. It looks unkempt and in a disarray. Not one royal artifact nor human remains were ever found. These burrowed tunnels point to 4 cardinal directions, designating to the obelisk's main centre. Polygonal stone block technology is not unique to Axum. It was deployed in several countries, exemplified in Pumapunku, Holy Well of Santa Cristina, Cusco, Machu Picchu, and at Gympie Mound in northern Queensland. These long leggy ladies of Axum are far more than just a walk in the park. It's an impressive attraction that you can spend a day passing through and checking out these one-of-a-kind monoliths. If you have a bit of time up your sleeve, you can travel a further 1.8 kilometres outside the park exploring another ruin, the underground chamber. Supposedly they were the tombs of Caleb and Gabri Meskel, a father and son royal dynamo duo. Yet upon closer inspection, the technology deployed to burrow through and clad the entire tunnel route demonstrates a very efficient and resourceful measure of engineering. Come with me into the trenches of the underworld, where you will find hidden secrets buried in the dust of time.
Now, coming to the land with so many megalithic structures, it's amazing and completely new, even for me. Right now, I'm in the structure which is officially called King Caleb's tomb. Of course, we don't have traces of King Caleb, tombs, organic materials. But we do have these very fine megalithic structures. Let's look at one of the stones. Here, one corner, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and we would guess probably 2 or 3 more. So, 16 corners or 16 sides. This is a perfect example of the polygonal megalithic block. And this type of structures were built all over the planet in the time window from 5,000 to 8,000 before present. In Peru, Cusco, or Machu Picchu, we do have megalithic blocks reaching 26 corners. Now, besides just one block having so many sides, look at the others. Some of them are almost squares. Some of them, again, polygonal. But look how every one of them is of different size. When we build structures today, we build a factory, and factory makes us millions of blocks of the same size. Because this is the much simpler way to build. You buy thousands of blocks, you build your structures, palaces, churches. The ancients were smarter than that. Every block of different size, and then usually a smaller block in between the big ones. It doesn't make sense for us, but that's the reason why our structures collapse with the first bigger earthquakes. Ancients were much smarter. They knew that by giving this breathing space in a case of the earthquake, the blocks would lock themselves. So really these are earthquake-proven structures. Now, this is the land of wonder. Once we come to those huge obelisks of Axum, we're going to see some of the carvings. And archaeologists are, like almost always, wrong. They assign them to the 4th century AD rulers. This one to the 6th century AD rulers. They had nothing to do with them, except for the fact that they lived around. Sometimes they would leave some of their carvings inscriptions, and sometimes they would even be buried underneath those structures. But they had nothing to do with the process of the construction, because they belong to the era with more advanced civilizations. And when archaeologists see the false door, they said, well, this was, to trap or to fool the Luthers. Another nonsense by official archaeologists. And then when they see some carvings, windows-like, they said, oh, the number of windows equals the number of tombs underneath. I wonder what people 50 years from now will think about us. But I know for one thing for sure, they will be laughing at us. When we see one of the most superior underground chambers, for me, they are resonance chambers, not tombs, because the precision, how those polygonal blocks were fitting each other without the binding material, it belongs at least to the last megalithic period on the planet, which was between 5,000 and 8,000 years back, if not the previous one.
Let's hold that thought for a moment. Osmanagich has come across this type of ancient engineering, transitioned across several countries. A technology that not only was ahead of its time, but deployed a superior method that allowed joints to move through an unrestricted motion. Polygonal stone masonry, comprised of interlocking seams woven to a tight fit like a knitted woolen scarf. It's only natural to think that our human ancestors, through painful trials and tribulations and many errors later, came up with this technique. Yet, the scripted pages of our human history are laced with holes. Fast forward to our current timeline, and we've managed to corrupt the very essence of ancient existence, such as Italy and their fascist tendencies to just walk right in and steal an obelisk from right under the Ethiopians' noses.
Obelisk of Axum was rediscovered in the late 1935, December, when the Italian soldiers came here to occupy Ethiopia. And 2 years later, based on order coming directly from Benito Mussolini, the fascist prime minister of Italy, the stela was brought from here to Napoli and from there to Rome. It was erected back, standing in the front of Ministry for Italian Africa. 1947, United Nations ruled that the stela was supposed to be brought back to Ethiopia. However, for decades, the promise was not fulfilled. In 1961, the Ethiopian Tsar, Haile Selassie, during his visit in Italy, repeatedly asked that stela be brought back. But when Italian architects explained him how difficult that task was and how expensive, he basically gave up, stating, okay, he's going to keep this stela in the hands of Italian as the example of the friendship between two countries. When Haile Selassie was removed from the power in 1974, but the generals, they said they do not respect what he said, they wanted the stela back. So finally in the year 2005, it was packed in 3 pieces, brought back, and in the year 2008, it was erected here as a matter of the national pride for the Ethiopians. It cost about 6 million euros at that time to move it back. and a lot of construction efforts. With all the modern technology, cranes and the others. So how to explain that somebody does bring this piece? It can be 150, 350 or 520 tons from the quarry, which is 7 kilometers to the west from here, in one piece. That would be actually unbelievable and impossible task for the king Ezena's time.
A very sad and tragic end to this dearly beloved object. So typical of a corrupt idiot. They always have to ruin a good thing. I wouldn't be surprised it was once used to power up something, but I'll put that thought aside for now. Standing there like a blingy trinket in a souvenir shop, the obelisk is currently non-operational. It once stood as a mighty and proud mechanism that was put to good use. If the proud king and his noble entourage did the honourable thing by hauling a single solid granite block from Egypt all the way to Ethiopia using nothing but elephants and muscle men, then his glorious empire would have lasted 1,000 years. Easy peasy, right? I doubt the king's treasury would have minted billions of shiny new gold coins to afford that publicity stunt.
The idea is that hundreds of elephants and hundreds of thousands of slaves had this task accomplished is not really believable. You can bring 1,000 or 5,000 elephants, but this piece of stone can only fit just several elephants, and they cannot carry 600 tons undressed stone. The same thing goes for the slaves. One man can lift 50 kilos. Around one, you can put 100 people, 5 tons. You cannot put thousands of people because you need to lift it. And for the lifting, you have to have technology, which was not existent in the 4th century AD. We are facing superior builders. Their technology, construction, transportation, erection, they would not make such cardinal mistake and not leave enough space to go under the ground. My experience with some of the menhirs, like with the biggest one in southern France, which was 175 tons in mass. Today, 4 broken pieces on the ground, but originally 7 meters below the ground. Here we can see 5 meters or so below the ground. But they also had those support plates in front of the stelas to keep the balance. So for sure, they had a way to keep it erected. Now, if this is the time frame, 5,000 to 8,000 years back, then what was the purpose?
These obelisks are far more than an aesthetically pleasing exhibit. They stand in unison, not built to fashion man's superiority of power, nor are they grave markers, signposts, flagpoles, or tombstones. The written language sculptured along these monoliths do not speak of a Aksumite ruler's conquest, nor who invented the Ark of the Covenant. There is no hard evidence to justify this tale. The fallen obelisk's untimely fate is established from its fragmented position. A tremendous amount of force to cause such an implosion, possibly caused by an unidentified weapon at high speed. Yet this theory has been ruled out as unfounded. There is no other logical explanation for the underground tunnel usage other than its connecting passage proceeding to the obelisk's location. They would have acted as water catchments, channeling water straight through to the monolith's main centre. Rain in Ethiopia is not as frequent compared to monsoonal seasons during the last ice age. Back then, the landscape experienced frequent monsoons that lasted for several months of the year. The open passage is the most fascinating of them all. Just before the entrance, seen on top of several stone blocks, are these hardy T-shaped joins. They are dotted along several stone blocks. Ingrained T-shaped joins bonding two blocks together shown along these seams. If you look closely, chemical residue of corroded iron, nickel, and other elements mark its territory. This unique ancient technology is not a solitary invention. This builder's trademark paved its technology in several continents, like the one found in Pumapunku. Ironically, the Iron Age of 1200 and 600 BC began to discover using carbon to generate steel. Was this technology in use before humans discovered steel?
Why do archaeologists assign such a construction fate to the 4th century? Well, because the King Ezena was the one who accepted Christianity, so he was the last pagan king. But then the huge state was established, and they are saying, well, because it was a rather powerful country, they did have resources. But of course, when the Christianity came here in the 4th century, around 330 AD, they did not respect pagan, as they were saying, customs, placing those big obelisks as tombstones, as they are saying. And indeed, below us in the ground, there are several tombs. 30 of them were discovered. But when we see how they were built, using the small broken stones, broken plates, it has nothing to do with the superiority of this stela. These are two different time periods. So my conclusion is, those stelas were installed thousands of years before the known time. But having in mind that below us is underground lake with potential underground water flows, tells us that there is a possibility that what we call today Stella Park, which is a nice hilly area, was at one point energetically related. The second thing, placing such a huge obelisks on the surface of the planet are excellent topographic or geodesical markers. The same thing goes for the obelisks in Karnak. So did they use them because those places were very significant for our planet? It's very possible. 7 largest obelisk stelas, 7 of them remind us on star system of Pleiades, 7 sisters of Pleiades. However, I was checking the other places with the broken stelas, at least 21 of them, and then more than 100 in the wider area. Was the size of the stela showing the biggest, the most shiny star? Was the distance between them, was relative distance between those stars looking from our planet? Was more than 100 stelas matching more than 100 stars in constellation Pleiades? Maybe. As we know, the ancient builders were using their monuments, megalithic sites and pyramid sites, for different purposes. So it could be the case here.
The simplest answer is usually the most obvious one. If you're going to build a city or a town, shouldn't you have a plan? Even a 5-year-old would know that, right? Town planning is crucial to forming a centre for commerce, hiring smart architects to draw up the floor plan, whilst the hardy engineers do all the rudimentary geometric calculations on how much time and resources required to build a new city. Of course, most of what you've been told is pure conjecture. There is no evidence to suggest that the king and his men had geometric engineering expertise, with a flair of artistic diversity franchised across many other continents. Once a city is built, you need moneymen. Yes, the ones who minted those shiny blingy gold coins in limited quantities to trade for goods and services. If the empire was built on gold, where did they find it? Where were they mined? And how much gold did they dig up to finance such an ambitious public infrastructure? Until recently, archaeologists unearthed various Stone Age remnants in close proximity to Axum. A pre-Aksumite settlement existed around the 7th to 4th century BC. Yet, there is no sufficient evidence to link them as the monolith master builders. According to archaeologists' recent discovery of numerous gold coins with a bust of a prominent person. However, they remain uncertain on the amount that were mined, minted, and circulated to facilitate the immensely expensive public infrastructure. The underground chambers show no affirmative proof they were actual royal tombs of Caleb and Gebri Meskel. No human remains were ever found. It is likely King Ezana and his royal entourage were buried elsewhere during or prior their empire going into economic freefall. These obelisks were not designed and constructed for the glorification of a centralized power. Yet the stele of Ezana does not speak of a king's iron-fisted rulership. It speaks of a different tale, a society that spawned from a monetary system of revered value, cultivated a rich civilization with no authoritative command. The king himself did not magically wave his wand and presto, out came these gorgeous beauties along the catwalk. These obelisks tell a story of master builders that crafted a monumental artwork before our agricultural history. To say that these obelisks were a borrowed concept from Meroe in Sudan is once again conjecture. There is no link to support this. If the Aksumite Empire were enormously powerful, enriched with gold, proclaimed by modern archaeologists and engineers, then why did its empire fall? What went wrong with their economy? If they took so much pride of their public infrastructure achievements, then why suddenly abandon them? King Ezana and his predecessors weren't exactly thrifty investors. Despite the archaeologists' fixated fascination of the Aksumite kingdom's economy derived from traded commodities of gold, ivory, and hides, made no mention of the cause of its financial downfall. Archaeologists hypothesize gold was a powerful commodity that brought international trade and diplomatic relations into the region. The king's coffers were frequently filled thanks to the gold treasury minting coins at the king's seal of approval. Gold was their predominant form of money, it was circulated in limited quantities, preventing an inflated oversupply. Not everyone benefited from this golden enterprise. Only the wealthy and elite transcended into the gold coin rush and began languishing their precious resource for themselves. Nevertheless, this rare asset bolstered the nation's GDP into a booming economy. But the question still remains: if King Ezana and his predecessors created grandiose public works that made them feel on top of the world, then why did his empire fail? What went wrong? To keep their accounting books looking good, gold was a limited commodity distributed to the wealthy class. For a while, King Ezana's warrior society seemed promising until he did the unthinkable. As war was looming near the forefront, King Ezana was trapped between a rock and a hard place. His military needed powerful weapons to defeat the oncoming enemy. Trade relations began to dwindle as gold was becoming scarce to source. Out of desperation, he ordered the treasury to have the gold coins debased. The mint simply stripped away 80% of the gold coin's purity by mixing it with copper and other less pure elements, melt them down, and circulated debased coins of worthless value. A gold scam he thought no one would notice. This decision ultimately led to King Ezana's demise. His world came down in a great thundering crash. Hyperinflation angered the citizens and investors the moment they saw right through his scam. The masses revolted against his government. Not only did he face war on the outside, he also faced war within. Victory was no longer in reach. Defeat was imminent. As the Aksumite Empire collapsed into economic ruin, the royal and wealthy class benefited from the collapse by taking their gold and fled, leaving the poor, broken, and unfortunate to deal with a financial crisis that left them completely destitute. Archaeologists have come across primitive artifacts left over by Neolithic and Paleolithic settlements that point to an earlier civilization. Yet, it is only superficial evidence surmised from improper theories. You could argue that these primitive clans did create these beautiful obelisks as the great masters of geometry. However, it doesn't point to the fact they were not highly qualified in the understanding of quantum geometric physics. If they were, they would have done this type of construction many times over in many different parts of the world. The only evidence that sufficiently points to ancient beings as the true ancient master builders is the language carved along those monoliths. The engraved motifs were not decor. They speak a language of geometric calculus. If interpreted correctly, it would speak of a decentralized society that held energy as their store of value. That was their money. And that money was their lifeblood of their civilization that built those monumental ancient cities. If human ancestors did manufacture those obelisks in Axum, then why are we still stuck here, always answering to a centralized authority who constantly cheat and rob our time and freedom whilst taking credit for something they never did? Money is the lifeblood of an economy, the architecture of a civilization, a tool that we cannot do without. Throughout our human history, we're solely reliant on a tangible asset that secures us a better and prosperous future. Only corrupt humans, in their quirkiest ability, always have the means to destroy a monetary value through sheer greed and arrogance. If the Aksumite Empire is any example, they stole their greatest commodity and turned it into a worthless piece of crap with the audacity to deceive the masses by calling it money. The Obelisks of Axum witnessed an empire go from ultimate economic triumph to the pitfall of mankind. Amazingly, these obelisks remained undisturbed from the dirty hands of the war-mongering idiots. The moment the Aksumite Empire fell, these obelisks were left alone, unsung, unesteemed, as the silent recluse of a history phase long past. To assume these obelisks were built by the Aksumite people's hands is purely unfounded. To claim the Aksumite rulership adequately employed well-educated, well-mannered engineers and well-rounded architects with a passion for obelisk manufacturing is quite outlandish. This stone trade likely paid huge dividends if they did construct these enormous monoliths elsewhere using their stamp trademark as proof. Archaeologists still refuse to acknowledge that these obelisks were built by sophisticated and highly qualified master builders who left their hallmark of success at several different locations. Empires are merely transfers of wealth. If these obelisks could speak, they lived a good life originating from a well-balanced society without a centralized command. A civilization that were the architects of sound money and free markets distinguished by their three true wealths: time, freedom, and knowledge. They did not steal their people's wealth. They simply honoured a decentralised monetary system that created the beautiful paradise. Today, the wealth transfer will happen to a country near you. We can live a brilliant life like that of the ancients if you let a financial crisis wipe you out or benefit from it. You decide. In the next video, I'll be going back to Egypt, exploring an enormous ruin that resembles two muscle bodyguards minding a famous Hollywood movie star's mansion, figuratively speaking. That's all for now.